consider the prostate if you find these of value. Why? What is important to us? Chronic prostatitis patients showed a significant decrease in libido, erectile function, ejaculation, orgasm frequency, self-confidence in sexual life, sexual satisfaction, the partner's orgasm frequency. The problem is if you've got a low libido, you're going to have no ejaculation. If you've got erectile function, you're not going to have any orgasm frequency. These seem to be interplayed with one another constantly in our sexual life, in our walk. And it's not one item leading this to that to this. All of these things are very, very interesting, and they start with a reduced libido on many occasions, and that can be caused by, well, my prostate is sore, I'm in too much pain, all these sort of funny things. I've noticed a very interesting correlation when you mentioned diabetic medication, and I'm very pleased that you offered, because I've noticed very quickly after getting a diabetic diagnosis, you find that you're hypertension. You know, you're hypertensive, so you've got to take hypertension medication. So you've got to take blood, pressure medicine. Blood pressure medicine attacks what part of the body first? Anybody know? Correct, the erection. Well done, that was fantastic. Right, so the chronic prostatitis symptoms will significantly decrease sexual function, and of course your sexual life quality and overall quality of life is destroyed. It's actually very, very important that it's not just one aspect, it's this little organ this size that actually can knock us completely for a loop. You with me? Next slide, please, mate. So I'd like to show you the pathway to disease. Disuse or misuse of the prostate leads to, I'm just going to point with you, organ atrophy. Now this word atrophy in Afrikaans, I don't know what it is, so I can't even try and translate, but I'm going to try and explain. Have you ever seen anybody a friend of yours lands up in a wheelchair? 2 months later, the size of the leg turns into 1/3 of what it originally was. That's atrophying. It's a wasting away, a destruction of the organ. So it leads to an organ atrophy. Both of these reduce to a blood flow. Both of them, if you push again, they a blood flow reduction to the prostate. Now this can be caused by multiple different things: injury, surgery, infection, bacterial, viral. We'll come to all of these things. And the funny thing here is actually spousal revenge syndrome spasm. Now I'm putting that in just because it was completely fascinating. Spousal revenge syndrome spasm. So this is actually done when Oak has been a bit naughty and he goes, for takeouts instead of getting, home cooked meals, and the mental anguish he goes through, he gets into a spasm because if she finds out, his world's going to be in trouble, and it actually stops blood flow, stops penile function, and he can actually be in trouble. And it's actually a medical research. So most of what I'm telling you is medical research, by the way. I can prove this from medical studies. All of the blood flow reduction creates immediately toxic deposit into the prostate. It's a filter of the system. And a lot of the toxins are actually kept in the prostate. We're going to come to that later. Pathogenesis, you're too fast, I'm not finished, stop. Donkey, I'm stirring with you. But a pathogenesis, lots of bacteria, virus, fungus, there's a lot of things that go into the prostate that could create problem, as well as calcification. So whenever you don't move something, anybody ever heard of frozen shoulder syndrome? Okay, everybody had something like that. You hurt yourself and you keep it, and then suddenly that joint started. Where did you come from? Because it's not moving, because I'm fixed. It's this calcification that steps up even in the prostate, and the calcifications go again. This all leads to an inflammatory response in the body, and specifically in the prostate, which then immediately takes us to a prostatitis. And that prostatitis again will lead back, if you push it again, into what is really a cycle of madness in the benign prostatic hyperplasia zone, where BPH, now you've got a prostatitis, inflammation, these things run against each other, and then ultimately this leads us to disease, cancer. And now we've got to deal with it because that becomes stagnant. So the concept, very simply to explain, is that we get the prostate fluid that's slightly viscous. It then gets a bit more sludgy, more like pouring custard, like you get ultramel custard, and then it moves very quickly to like a jelly-like status, and then fixed solid. And you actually feel that on the prostate as a solid mass, and that's now cancer. So that's the way it goes, and actually can be felt, and this is why the finger exam is actually quite important. And sometimes it can be missed, but generally it's very important. Thank you. This is a strange, interesting fact. Maternal protein malnutrition has a direct attack on the prostate's ability to survive long term. Maternal protein malnutrition. Can you imagine this? Maternal malnutrition of low protein diet is associated with increased incidence of metabolic disorders and decreased male fertility in adult life. So, I mean, this is going to be rah for the vegetarians, but look what this does. This maternal protein malnutrition delays prostate development, growth and maturation until adulthood, probably as a result of low testosterone. Could be, they're just trying to figure it out. The higher incidence of cellular dysplasia and prostatitis suggests that this maternal protein malnutrition increases prostate susceptibility to diseases with aging. So it depends on how your mother ate. 50 odd years later, for the younger ones here, 50, 60 years later, we are now having effect for what the mother ate when she was pregnant with us. How insane is that? That is insane. A lot of these effects we don't know about because we're only just discovering them now as we go along. This is another strange fact, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. But people with chronic prostatitis or chronic pelvic pain syndrome have exhibited lower heart rate variability parameters. So there's a heart issue that's attached with this, and I'm going to come back to this a bit later because I was going through this quickly with my son just to say, son, did I make this in order? Because I've got to speak to gentlemen, they're not idiots, and I must at least make sense. And he showed me something that is coming out of the natural world again that is very, very, not very unknown, but it's not well known, should I say. And it's interesting that the chronic prostatitis syndrome has evidence of increased arterial stiffness, and not where we need it. You understand? It's in the veins and not where we need the stiffness. And vascular endothelial dysfunction. I thought you'd get that one. I could draw pictures. Come on, guys. It was at least funny. You don't laugh. Oh, never mind. This is the first mechanistic correlation that found the link between a higher incidence of self-reported cardiac disease. So the prostate has a direct link to the heart. This is fascinating. This is extremely fascinating because heart problems developing from this inflammatory or disease response, self-reported, not diagnosed by doctors. That's interesting. That's interesting because your body is not an idiot, by the way. My mind is, but my body knows what's going on. If I start to listen, it can actually start assisting me with many things.